Hey, what's up guys? I'm Pokerface Ash, and you're probably wondering why I'm on Huggy Poker's YouTube channel. Well, he is here at my 1-3 no limit meetup game at Georgetown Poker Club. I hope you guys enjoy the vlog.
Welcome back, guys. We're playing some 1-3 no limit for the meetup game. It's a $500 max buy-in, and we're at Georgetown Poker Club, which is a pretty small local club that gives you that kind of Cheers feeling, if you know what I mean.
Sometimes you wanna go where everybody knows your name.
Unfortunately for us, Pokerface Ash sits down to our left, which is a little bit intimidating since I know she's a good player. I could definitely see her giving us a hard time, but hopefully it works out. We get our first hand about 6 hands into the game. We're under the gun +1 and we pick up pocket 10s. The first player folds and I raise to $15. Just the button, who's a woman that's been playing pretty straightforward, makes the call, and we're heads up to the flop, which comes down ace high. Obviously, not wanting to see an ace when you're holding a pocket pair, unless you have the pocket aces, of course, but we c-bet anyway, making it $15, and we get a pretty quick call. The turn brings the 8 of spades, I check, and the woman bets out for $45. I don't think there's anything to do here this early in the session other than give her credit, so I fold, and she shows us ace-7 for top pair along with a redraw to the straight, so our fold was good. 3 hands later, we're in the big blind, and it folds around to the button, who raises to $10. The small blind calls, and we've got 10-6 suited. It's a suited hand, it's not a great one, but it's only $7 more, so I go ahead and make the call to join along. The flop pretty much smashes us in the face as it comes down at 5-10-7 with 2 spades. So we've got top pair, granted we've got a pretty terrible kicker, but we do have the flush draw to go with it. The small blind checks, I check to let the button continue, and he makes it $15. The small blind calls, and I immediately raise it up to $60. Both players pretty much snap fold, and we take down the pot. The very next hand, when we're in the small blind, there's a double straddle for $10 and $20 respectively. The first player to act quickly raises to $60, the next player folds, and the button calls. We look down at pocket 10s in the small blind, and even though the first player to act is the one who made the initial raise, I don't feel like we can just call here. I think we've got to put in a raise. I normally go about 3x the initial raise, but with the cold call, the straddle, and us being out of position, I feel like making a bigger bet of about 5x is probably a bit more appropriate here. Doing the math though, that would be a raise of $300, leaving only about $250 behind for a bet on the flop. The ratios really don't make much sense, so I end up just going with a bet of $220 instead, which should leave us with a strong $330 bet on the flop if called. Apparently, our raise disappoints Pokerface Ash on our left though.
$220 is the bet.
Alright.
You were gonna do that? That's still your move?
I've seen a couple.
The original raiser clearly has a bit of a decision and brings up that he's actually come across my vlog recently. I'm assuming he's trying to think of what our range is here based upon our play that he's seen in the past.
I've seen a couple of your vlogs.
Mine?
Yeah.
Oh, alright. Yeah, I bought it for 5.
Yeah, she does too, so it's
Like 310 or something.
Yeah. No, I figured that. It's
Yeah.
always looking like under the gun. Straddle.
Eventually he makes the fold and the button follows suit, so we pick up the pot without even having to see a flop.
I had an actual hand. I wouldn't have done it without a hand.
Damn it,
Like,
okay.
yeah.
I had ace king suited.
Just 2 hands later, we've got ace-9 suited in the cutoff. The +1 player makes a min raise to $6 and the hijack calls. We've got a suited ace in position, so I bump it up to $20. In retrospect, I feel like $25 might have been a better bet sizing here, but I put out the bet before thinking about it for too long, so we're stuck with 20. Just the +1 player calls, so we're heads up to the flop, which comes down queen, queen, king with 2 spades. He checks to us, and I think we could check back or bet here. Our ace high could be good, but I also don't expect any pocket pairs to fold, even if our opponent missed the flop, so I opt to check back. The turn brings an offsuit 6, and our opponent leads for a pot, $50. This bet size doesn't really make sense to me, whether he's holding a king or queen, or even a pocket pair. Given our weak line on the flop, neither a king nor a queen is going to get much value from such a strong bet here, and I also don't really expect any pocket pairs to try to show that much strength here. I think he's either got a bluff or maybe a draw with a hand like Jack 10. Our ace high feels like it's probably good here, so I make the call. The river brings the ace of clubs. Obviously this card improves our hand, but at the same time, I'm not happy to see it. Jack 10 is one of the hands that I think is in our opponent's range, in which case he would have improved to a straight here. He leads out for $100, which now feels a bit more like value. Not really happy about this spot since I doubt he's making this bet with a king now, but I also don't think we can fold here. I put in the chips to call, and unsurprisingly, he flips up Jack 10 for the rivered straight, and our hand is no good. 3 hands later, we've got pocket 6s, and I raise $10 first to act. I'd usually raise about $15 if we were playing at the lodge, but the raise sizes here at Georgetown Poker Club have been a bit different so far, and I'm trying to adjust. Pokerface Ash calls on our left, and the next player 3-bets to 40. It folds around to the big blind who cold calls, and at this point, we're getting a pretty good price to join along. Ash folds, and we've got 3 to the flop. It comes down queen deuce deuce with 2 clubs. We both check to the aggressor, who quickly c-bets for 80. The big blind folds, and I'm borderline between calling and folding here. We're ahead of hands like ace king and ace jack, but we're losing to just about everything else that 3-bets here. I decide to call once just to see if our opponent will slow down on the turn though. The turn brings the 8 of diamonds, another overcard to a pair, though it's pretty unlikely that should hit his range. I check again, and he makes it 125 now, keeping up the pressure with only about 100 more behind in his stack. This definitely looks like value. I don't think we can speculate any further, so I just give this one up. I add on for $200 to bring us up to the max buy-in of $500, so we're in for $700 total now. 2 hands later, we've got a not very notable hand, but there is some particular action that occurs here that I want to call out as it plays into my thought process in a future hand. I straddle to $6 under the gun, and Ash on our left double straddles to 12. Action folds to the big blind who limps in, and it's only costing us $6 here to win 31, so I call as well. Ash then raises pretty big, making it $55 with position on both of us. We both fold since we obviously haven't represented any strength here, and she picks up a pretty easy one given the action. 4 hands later, we've got 98 offsuit in the cutoff. The player on our right raises to $15, and I make a loose call. Ash calls on our left, and the small blind and big blind make the call as well, so we've got 5 players headed to the flop. It comes down 4-6-5 with 2 hearts, so we pick up a gut shot to the nuts. The blinds check to the pre-flop raiser who c-bets for 50. This is a board that should favor the range of pretty much anyone else at the table over the pre-flop raiser, and I decide to take an aggressive line here with our gut shot, really hoping just to take it down, but having some extra equity if we do get called. I make it 125, and it folds back to the pre-flop raiser on our right. She puts in the chips to call, and we're heads up now. And if the turn isn't just perfect as it brings an offsuit 7, giving us the absolute nuts. The woman on our right checks, and I continue the story, betting about half pot for 175. We pretty much get snap called, and I'm thinking we probably just need to avoid a heart in the river given our interest. The river brings a very interesting offsuit 8, putting 5 to a straight on the board. At first, I hate this card since if she's holding a 9, then we're chopping, but realistically, what possible hand can I put her on that's holding a 9 here? We're probably still good, and even better, it's pretty unlikely that she's going to fold here, probably expecting a chop. She checks again, and we've got a no-brainer shove here.
I got the 9 high.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You want checks for me?
I got very lucky on that.
John, you want checks for me?
We're 12 hours here. Oh, so yeah.
3 for her.
10 minutes later, we've got ace-7 offsuit on the button. There's a $10 straddle, and action folds to the hijack who limps in, followed by the cutoff who calls as well. We've got an ace in position, but I'm really not expecting to get any folds with a raise given how the stable's been playing, so I end up just calling behind the late position raiser. Ash folds in the small blind, the big blind calls, and the straddle checks, so we've got 5 to the flop. It's not a bad one for our hand as it comes down 4-8-6 rainbow, giving us a gut shot. The big blind is straddle check, and the hijack, who was the first player to limp in, makes it $15. The cutoff folds, and I go ahead and call with our draw. The big blind is straddle call too, so we've still got 4 players left heading to the turn. It pairs the board with the 8 of hearts, and action checks to the hijack again. He goes with a check this time, and I'm having a hard time believing anyone's got a hand as strong as trips with the 8 or better at this point, given all the weak lines. I feel like if somebody had an 8 here, they probably would have let out to protect against the straight getting a free river card, so I feel like we could probably pick up the pot here with a strong bet. I make it $75. The big blind and straddle quickly fold, but the hijack's having a harder time believing us. He shoots a quick look my way like he doesn't quite believe that I've got it, but he clearly doesn't have much himself, and he throws his hand in.
Good answer.
Thank you. Thank you.
2 hands later, we've got pocket jacks in the hijack. The first player folds, and the +1 player makes it $15. It folds to us, and we've got the 4th best hand in poker, which is certainly worth a 3-bet. I make it $50. It folds around to the big blind who cold calls. This guy's been playing a bit of a loose game, so I'm not expecting him to show up with a better hand here, but I'm not excited about having more players seeing the flop in a bloated pot. The original raiser calls as well, so the 3 of us take a flop. It comes down 6-7 queen rainbow, putting an overcard to our pair on the board, which we're obviously not thrilled to see. The big blind leads out for $75, and the +1 player instantly pushes all in for $219 total. If we were just facing a lead from the big blind, I might have continued here, but with two players showing this much interest in the flop, we're clearly behind at least one of them at this point. I begrudgingly throw our hand away. The big blind calls the all in, so we get to see a full run out and whether our fold was correct.
Good luck.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, just one. I know it's not about
The +1 player announces two pair and flips over queen 10 offsuit for top pair on the flop. The big blind mucks, and if we freeze the video at just the right moment as he goes to muck, we can pretty clearly see a 3 in his hand. So maybe he got overzealous with pocket 3s and hoped that we both missed the flop, then convinced himself the +1 player was shoving with a draw on a rainbow flop? Not really sure. Either way, our fold was right and we lose the minimum. 20 minutes later, we've got ace-10 offsuit in the hijack. There's a $6 straddle and the first 3 players fold. We've got a pretty good ace in pretty good position and I bump it up to 20. It folds to the small blind who 3-bets to 55. I might consider calling this bet since we've got position and deep enough stacks to speculate here, but that all changes when the big blind, who's the loose player from the last hand, goes all in for what looks like about $180 and the tighter player right behind him in the straddle calls his shove. We're clearly no good versus the tight player, regardless of what the other players have, and I throw our hand away. We see we're behind pocket queens, which he flips up pretty quickly, though we were ahead of the looser player who flips up ace-3 suited. We made the right fold, though it always hurts to see that you not only would have hit a good flop to keep you in the hand, but would have improved to the best hand on the turn. Either way, we can't be too upset since we did make the right play in the moment. 3 hands later, we look down at pocket kings in the +2 position. The first 2 players limp in, and I raise to 20. It folds to the cutoff who calls, the button calls, both the blinds fold, and just the original limper calls, so we've got 4 players to the flop, which comes down 8-deuce-10 rainbow. The limper checks, and I'd normally bet here, but with the loose player being involved in the hand, I opt to check instead, thinking he might take a stab at it when checked too. However, he doesn't get the chance as the woman behind us in the cutoff ends up leading out for $75. The loose player on the button behind her insta-calls, and the limper calls too, and now it's back on us. It's hard to assume we're behind here unless someone flopped a set or top 2 pair with 10-8 in their hand. My only reservation here is that there's not too many draws since it's a rainbow board, though there are some obvious straight draws. I don't think we're getting away from our hand though, and I don't want to just call here and let a bunch of players see a free turn, so I go ahead and put in a pretty big raise, making it $300. The woman who let out makes a quick fold, and the loose player on the button starts shuffling his chips like he doesn't really want to let go of his hand. He counts out calling chips, stacks them up, studies his hand again, and eventually folds. The limper to our right immediately announces,
I got tilted too many times. I quit. I can't do this.
Let's do it.
so we get a full run out where we get the best turn we could ask for with the king of spades, giving us the nuts with top set. The river brings the 9 of diamonds, putting some straight possibilities out there though. I show our hand, he quickly mucks, and we take down an over $1,000 pot with our kings. 3 hands later, Pokerface Ash straddles to $6, and we look down at ace-king offsuit in the big blind. We watch as the hijack limps, the cutoff limps, the small blind completes, and no one really looks strong here. I start thinking back to that hand earlier when the small blind and I limped into Ash's straddle, and she bumped it up due to no one showing strength. It's a bit of a risk, but I decide to take a chance at limping in here to see if she'll go for a raise in hopes that we can limp 3-bet. Unfortunately, our gamble does not pay off as she quickly checks behind and the 5 of us take the flop. It's not a great flop, but it's not the worst one either, as it comes down to 3 queen jack with 2 clubs, giving us a gut shot to Broadway. Obviously in this wide field though, we're pretty much certain to be behind, and we're drawing to probably an ace king or 10 at this point. I make a small donk lead for $12, hoping for a cheap turn. We get 2 callers, and the small blind ends up check raising pretty big to $85. Obviously this prices us out of our cheap turn that we wanted to see, so I throw our hand in. We recently agreed for the winner to show 1 card at the end of each hand as part of the meetup game, and so we do get to see that he had at least top pair at the minimum with the queen of hearts. We didn't really need the information, but it never hurts to get a little extra info. The very next hand, there's a $6 straddle and a $12 re-straddle, so we're essentially playing a game of 1, 3, 6, 12 for this hand. We see 1, 2, 3, 4 limps before the button folds. We've got a pretty good hand with king jack suited in the small blind, and I briefly consider making a big raise here. But considering how loose this table's been playing, I really don't want to play a huge pot out of position multi-way, so I just call instead. Ash folds her big blind, the first straddle calls, and the second straddle checks her option, so we've got 7 players headed to the flop. It's a pretty good one for our hand as it comes down jack high on a rainbow board. So we've got top pair second kicker. It's a limp pot though, so we've got to be wary of sets and really any 2 pair combinations. Still, being first to act with top pair here is definitely worth a bet, and I make it $35. Just the second straddle and the loose player on our left calls, and everyone else folds, so we've got 3 to the turn. And it's a pretty good one as it brings the king of hearts, so now we've got top 2 pair. We are behind some straights, but realistically we'd have to have been called by ace queen or queen 9 for someone to have a straight here. There was no pre-flop raise, so ace queen is unlikely, but queen 9 is a possibility. I'm not too worried about it though, and I'm assuming we've got the best hand at this point. In retrospect, I think betting out here is probably the right route, but at the time, I was thinking with the loose player still involved and him being the last player to act, it might be worth checking to him to see if he'll take a stab here. Unfortunately, it ends up checking through, so we get a free river, which is a total blank with the 6 of clubs. With the turn checking through, I'm confident we've got the best hand at this point. Betting here for value is the obvious option, but I'm curious if we can coerce the loose player to take a stab one last time, so I check again. It doesn't work out though, as it checks through once again, and we probably missed out on some value here by not being a little bit more direct with our betting. 15 minutes later, we've got ace 4 suited in the +2 position. The first 2 players fold, and I raise to $11. The cutoff, button, and small blind all call, and the big blind folds, so we've got 4 to the flop. It comes down 9-8 ace with 2 spades, so we flop top pair with not much of a kicker, along with a backdoor flush draw. The small blind checks, and I lead out for 25. The cutoff folds, and the loose player on the button calls. The small blind, who's the somewhat tight player I mentioned earlier, makes the call as well, so we're down to 3 for the turn. The small blind checks dark, and we see an offsuit 6. This card shouldn't improve too many hands. 10-7 gets there, though it's unlikely. I'm not really feeling great about just having an ace with a weak kicker here though, and despite all the draws, I prefer checking here so as to not blow up the pot with our pretty weak holding on this board. The loose player checks behind, and we get a free river. It's a total blank with the 3 of diamonds. The tight player in the small blind leads out for a little over half pot now, making it $65. Even though he's a bit on the tighter side, we have underrepped our hand by checking on the turn, and all the draws miss, so I think we've got a call here. The third player folds, and the tighter player shows he flopped bottom 2 pair with 9-8 off, so our hand's no good. 15 minutes later, we've got an interesting bomb pot hand. Usually, we're playing Omaha for these ones, but Pokerface Ash decided to play some crazy pineapple. I've never had a hand of pineapple before, so I'll admit up front that I'm not really sure how I should be playing this one. We've got 10-7-3 with 2 hearts in the cutoff. There's 9 players of the flop, which comes down 7 Queen 8 with 2 clubs on the top board and 8 Jack 9 with 2 clubs on the bottom board. So we've just got second pair on the top board, but we flop the second nuts on the bottom board with the Jack high straight. We're losing to Queen 10 only. I legitimately am not sure how concerned I should be about someone holding that though, since I've not played this before. The first player leads out for $15, and we see 2 calls. Realistically, I should probably be raising here to protect our hand, but I know how vulnerable straights are in PLO, and that's kind of playing into my head a bit given that I'm new to this variant of the game. I end up just making a call with the idea that if the turn is safe, maybe we can get aggressive then. I discard our 3 of hearts since we're playing for the straight, and we get a pretty ugly turn as we see the ace of spades on top and the queen of hearts on bottom. So any 10 makes a straight on the bottom board now. Considering we're only playing for half the board and that there are 3 players in the pot, getting quartered here would be a net loss for us. The player who let out in the flop checks now, and the next player opens for 60. I don't think we can fold yet though, as he could be playing for either board and we don't really have enough information to make a decision quite yet. I make the call, and the last player calls as well. The river brings the 3 of clubs on top and the 3 of diamonds on bottom, so the front door flush comes in on top and our hand is unchanged on bottom. The first player leads out for $110, and I'm pretty confident he's hit the flush on top with the way his action played out. The next player, who was the aggressor on the turn, raises all in for $404. You can hear my frustration with my deep guttural sigh. The way the second player called on the flop, led on the turn, then shoved on the river really plays like he had a straight jaw that got there on the turn. I think we're chopping with him at best if we call, assuming he's not holding king 10. I finally relent and toss our hand away. Our other opponent makes a call, so we do get to see what they're holding. As expected, the player who let out has a flush with 4 deuce of clubs, and the player who pushed all in turned the straight with the jack 10. So we made the right fold on the river, but obviously got burned a bit by not raising on the flop, assuming our opponent would have folded, which is pretty doubtful since he had draws on both boards. Alright, I get a little crazy in this next hand. I don't know what inspired me other than this being a fun meetup game, and I thought it would be funny to pick up a pot with 7 deuce, even though we're not playing the 7 deuce game or anything like that. It folds to us in the +2 position, and I raise to $11. The loose player in the small blind calls, and the big blind calls as well. So we've got 3 to the flop with position on both opponents. It comes down ace-5 king rainbow, which is definitely a good flop for our normal raising range. I see bet for 20 since, obviously, we're not winning this one by playing passively. Just the loose player calls, so we're heads up now. The turn brings the Queen of Hearts. Our opponent checks a second time, and I keep up the pressure, making it $40. We get called again, and I'm not really sure what I'm hoping for on the river to get a fold. We see the Jack of Hearts, so any 10 makes a straight now. I make a pretty healthy bet for $100, and that does the trick as he grumbles and throws his hand away instantly. 2 hands later, we've got the last interesting hand of the day. We've got pocket queens under the gun. I raise to $15, and Pokerface Ash immediately 3-bets to $45. I completely overlooked this at the time, probably because he starts putting the chips out at the same time as Ash, but the player on our left cold calls her 3-bet as well. The next player folds, and the loose player I've mentioned a few times pushes all in for $285. Wow, this is quite a spot to be in. When it folds back to us, despite all the action, I really don't think we can let Ash's 3-bet deter us here. We've got the 3rd best hand in poker, and if it's a cooler, then so be it. I 5-bet all in, and Ash throws her hand away quickly. And I almost flip up my hand before realizing the cold caller to our left is still involved in the hand. I'm hoping my overlooking his original call doesn't get us into a sticky spot, but after a few seconds, he relents and throws it away, so we get a full run out heads up.
Queen. Heads up.
Ace king.
You got a pair?
I got a pair, yeah.
Queen. Oh, man.
Was that queen?
Queens, yeah. That's a bad flop for me, though.
I would have won.
Oh, jeez.
Ooh.
We end up taking down the pot, and thankfully, it sounds like Pokerface Ash a 3-bet with Ace Jack that she got away from, and the player on her left cold called with Ace Queen, so pretty fortunate to get a fold from both of them considering the ace on the flop. So we didn't get to play for too long. We were there for about 2 hours and 45 minutes, bought in for $700 in all, cashed out for a little over $1,700, so had a win of about $1,000 and change after our hourly fees and membership fee as well. So pretty good result, happy with it, especially with it being a new place that we never tried before. I'll definitely be back to check it out again. Appreciate Ash coming and hosting the meetup game. Thanks for having me. Thanks for the intro clip as well, and thanks for watching. If you like the video, hit the like button. It really helps out the channel. And if you find that you're watching these videos regularly, hit the subscribe button too. Helps out a lot. And otherwise, we'll see you on the next one. Take care, guys.